Well, hello everyone. Sorry you didn't get to go to a football game Saturday. But if it makes you feel better, I don't think the the SEC starts for another 2 weeks. But both today and Wednesday, there's a tiny bit of new material today, not much though. And so no new material today, no new material Wednesday. We're using that time to discuss the exam, discuss the project, answer questions about it, stuff like that. Okay. And so what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about it, exam 1. I'm going to briefly discuss some new material that you can put on it. And then chat about the project. Oh, that's much better. All right. Okay, for exam 1, I already have a draft of the whole exam already up. So it's something you can go ahead and get started on. I know we've talked about most of it. So let me just first talk about the 3 problems we've already talked about that you already know or own it. Has anybody gone to download their data yet? Okay. Well, you may want to you have any trouble? Okay, you just went to the link, you looked for your number, and you downloaded 3 data sets, right? Okay. You know, if something happens and, you download data, say you download the data for question 3 and it doesn't look at all like question 3, be sure to let me know because I wrote code to automate all this and something could have always gone wrong. What I'm doing here is I feel like because of the way we have to do this class, it needs to be basically like a take-home exam. And I want an exam that's more fair to people who work hard and less fair to people who like to cheat. And so, for the first 3 questions, everybody has their own data. And so whatever the answer you have for number 1 will not be the same as for someone else. Now, there is one of you here, and I can't even remember who it is. Of course, I wouldn't tell you. You will have the exact answers. You may have you may calculate your numbers and find it's the same as on the test. That doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. It could be you were using the same data set. It could be just because of randomness. Could be with rounding. It turned out to be the right thing. But remember, question 1 is very, very similar to homework 6 that you've already did, where you have to use pivot tables, give me some averages, and of course, what you're going to do is on Thursday, when you get the test, you download it and you're going to answer it, save it to your computer, and for God's sake, save it a lot. Make sure you have a backup copy and everything. You'll type your name in here, and you'll provide your answers to each thing. Just type them down here, and then for question 1, you've got to make a chart like this, and what you'll do is you'll go in there and you'll delete this chart, and you'll add your own. Now remember, your chart needs to look is almost exactly like this, except your numbers may be a little different. Meaning, remember, when you did homework 6 and you went through the tutorial of how to do the bar chart, you saw that I want Garamond font, I want black font, I want the words to be easy to read like this, I want the y-axis to have dollar values. Do all those things just like in the tutorial. Because I'm grading it not just on whether you get the right numbers, but whether you have an attractive chart like this. Because good numbers don't mean much. If it looks like a sloppy chart, people are going to believe that you were probably sloppy in calculating the numbers too. A good aesthetic chart is a way of giving confidence to your numbers. And remember, unlike homework 6, I've got to have these data labels here. On homework 6, you didn't have to put the data labels here. On the on the exam you do, because that's how I'm going to take my computer, I'm going to put in your CWID number, it's going to go grab your data set, I'm going to see what those numbers are, and then I need to look up and see that we have the exact same numbers. So on both questions 1 and 2, those data labels are very important. You've already done homework 6, so you might want to go ahead and do question 1 from homework 1, exam 1, because it's very similar. Question 2 is you're going to, remember we did a histogram by hand in last class. This is where it's going to show you how to do it on the computer. And in modules under information for exam 1, there is an example that shows you exactly how to do exam 2. It's actually using very similar data, but remember you've got your own unique data set, so your numbers will be different. And again, I want you to have a chart that looks almost exactly like this. In your answer, you're going to delete this chart and put your new one in. You're going to, the tutorial shows you how to save the chart as a PDF. So when you come to Word, you're going to go Insert, Insert PDF. And again, I've got to have those data labels there. And the draft now does have how much each question counts for. I've still got it labeled as a draft because I'm giving you till Thursday to look at it and see if there's any other specific directions I need to add for you. Number 3 is where you use algebra to calculate willingness to pay, just like we did in class. Now here's the new one. And so there's one other question. It's the big question that counts for 30 points, and it's one big essay question. I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about this because you'll want some information on this. What this question is going to do is first going to present you with different ways of measuring food preferences. So number A says there, a blind taste test where subjects taste a food without any product labeling or awareness of brand names. Number 2 says taste tests where subjects taste a food in a context where the food has product labeling and brand name, though the actual food may or may not be associated with its correct labeling or name. Remember, one of the readings for the exam is the excerpt from Blink. It's something you'll enjoy reading. It's Malcolm Gladwell, so he writes very well. And there's a whole example where there was this one whiskey product that all of a sudden wasn't selling well. And they did blind taste tests, and they found that it was like people's favorite whiskey. Well, they said, well, why isn't it selling well? And then they looked at the bottles, and what they did, they took their whiskey, and put it into their competitor's bottle, took the competitor's bottle, put it in their whiskey bottle, and then had them taste it, and then people liked the other one. And so it turned out it was the bottle design that was driving preferences there. And so that's an example of that. And then there's a couple more there. And then what the question does, so I've got 5 different ways of measuring preferences there. And then we say, it's going to say, first describe your new food product below. So your answer is going to be specific to your new food product that you do for your class project. And then it's going to go for each one. It's going to say, under each research type, provide a brief essay describing which factors of food preferences it can be useful for in researching your food product. So let me give an example. And this is a big essay question, so we need to make sure that you understand what I'm asking for and the general philosophy of how I'm going to grade it. 4.B.1, and what you'll do is you'll provide your answer under here. It says, blind taste tests where subjects taste the food without any product labeling or awareness of the brand names. And so let's take if I call your name, say, yeah, real loud. Adrian Blakely, you're here? Okay. So yours was like So Delicious brand of ice cream has alternative dairy products including almond milk, coconut milk, soy milk, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so her food product is says a new variety of an existing product is ice cream with alternative kind of dairy products. Made like, soy milk, almond milk, that kind of thing. And so this thing's, and when it comes to preferences for like your product, there's a lot of things that would drive that, right? One is obviously the taste, but there's also the whole thing about non-dairy. That itself cues a number of things. There's the label you have. Oh, So Delicious already exists. And what you're looking at is a Kai oat milk flavored ice cream. Chai. That's like the tea, right?
Yeah, they have it in Aspen. It's really good.
Okay. Chai's not a spice, it's a combo of spices, right? Yeah, it sounds really dumb when I say that with my accent, doesn't it? What's Kai? Okay. And so obviously a blind taste test for you tells you, what people think of the taste alone, right? But of course, when they actually go to taste it, it may, when someone sees Kai oatmeal, that may make them think of something. I think of tea. Will it make them also kind of taste tea when they go eat it? Well, a blind taste test can't tell you that, right? So all it can tell you about is just the raw taste, absence of any context at all. And so that's what we're looking for there. And so, and let me go one down. Let's go to one I haven't say. 4.B.4, survey where subjects look at different food product packages at different prices and indicate how likely they are to purchase each product. So that would be like if you put your Kai oat milk alongside of those other brands, other soy milk and stuff. And so, blind taste tests, I can tell you whether they like it overall, but then you've got this other thing where now it's competing against these other things. That can start to give you an idea of like what its market share would be, that kind of thing, right? So you see how that different context allows you to get different information about preferences. That's what I'm looking for. Does that make sense? Last one, survey where subjects indicate how likely they are to buy a product while also answering a number of questions regarding their attitudes and beliefs towards a wide variety of issues. So what we're talking about there is linking this product with everything else in their life world. And so it may be that, Kai oat milk, who would these people like? Do they tend to be female? Probably. Do they, what other kind of things do they buy? You're trying to get what kind of person they are to help market to them, right? That's what this question's asking. Yeah?
I have a question. So what if your product, you could have similar things, but it doesn't have much that are just like it. So what would you do if your product's way different than usual?
You want me to talk about yours specifically?
You don't have to, but
I will. What's your name?
Leighton Dill.
That's why I'm spending this time like this, so I can answer these questions. Leighton Dill. Cinnamon Swirl Doritos. Woo! Right now, when you read it, you know it's going to be sugary and savory at the same time. The label would go a little against the color theme of sweetness, but still be pink. Marketing strategy, we use Doritos themed commercial and twist it to bring a dessert aspect. Okay, so like eating Doritos and a cake at the same time, that kind of thing. Okay. That's just another variety. It's an unusual variety. Some people had another variety that isn't all that out there. But like cinnamon swirl Doritos are out there. And you've Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
Sorry, I should have said that.
No, I think that is what you said. I just didn't get it. Well, you can, and so this is a good hint. When you're talking about the blind taste test, you can describe to me what type of taste test you're talking about. It could be a blind taste test where all they eat is your cinnamon swirl Doritos and they don't even taste anything else. And if that's what you're thinking about, then you should tell me that. So, this is a very broad essay questions, and so if you're answering it with a certain context in mind, you can tell me that. So this lets you kind of help write the question, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you might decide you want to do a blind taste test besides like regular Doritos or one or two other Dorito brands. And in that case, if you do it the first way where it's just alone, where all the tasting is this one thing and you say, what do you taste? You're trying to get their overall impression of it just from the taste bud sensations and aroma. Whereas if you're having them taste it along with the blind taste test of regular Doritos, you're spending less time talking about the product as it is and more about it relative to something else. How different is it? Can they tell which one's the regular one? To what extent does the sweetness really come through? And do they even detect the cinnamon compared to another one? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, these are essay questions, so you have the opportunity to take the time and have a full answer and set it up such that it's hard for you to be wrong. And see if you're asking a question like that and setting it up like that, that's telling me that you understand what blind taste tests are and the different way they can be used. It's telling me that you understand there's no such thing as one blind taste test. And you are actually there. On the exam, it says, tell me what your new product name is. That's actually the thing. You can copy and paste from your project assignment if you want. That part's not graded. That's just to tell me what you're looking at, if you still want to stick with the same one. That's my way of knowing exactly what product you're looking at without just assuming that you haven't changed it. And so I'll give you another set. So another one, I think is 4.B.3, talks about focus groups. Yeah, so 4.B.3 is focus groups where subjects discuss the appearance of the food product package. Now, of course, when I say that, it's assuming you basically know what a focus group is. We haven't actually talked about what focus groups are. Most people kind of know what they are. So if there's something up there you don't understand, please ask me. And so for yours there, Mrs. Dill, you had, if you copied and pasted your product there, and then you're telling me, the brown indicates, so she was describing the colors on the package. The brown indicates the cinnamon sugar and brown sugar. In a focus group, you can give this to people with the colors and ask them what it makes them think of. And there you're seeing, do they even say the kind of things you're thinking about? You could have one focus group where with the labels in black and white, and then another one where it was in colors, and comparing between those two groups, it can tell you what the colors make people think of. So in this case, it's not telling you anything about the actual taste of it, right? Because in a focus group where you just have them look at a package, they're not tasting it, and so all you're getting is the appearance. But you need to understand that this matters because what you expect something to taste like affects how things actually taste. Here's what the kind of thing I consider a good answer. What I'm wanting to see is, one, kind of the common sense things that you pulled out in this class, like Ms. Steele recognizing there's different types of taste tests. You can use them for different purposes, specifying what exactly you're doing. But I want to know that you have really read and studied the material. So how do I know that you do that? It says here in the question, it's going to say your audience here is me. So in your class project, you're writing it for someone in the industry. You're not writing it for me. On this, you're writing it for me. So if there's a word we covered in class or is in the readings of the textbook, you can say the word without defining it. You can assume I'll know what it is. And so you're writing for me. And what you're trying to do is demonstrate that you've done the readings, you've done the homeworks, and you're able to put it all together. So, drop-in terminology in there is very useful. So, for instance, let me actually take some, let me go to someone else. Say yo if you hear your name. Matt Drendel, Dalton Ford, you're here, right? Yep. Dalton Ford is looking at a new flavor of Hilldale Dairy Milk, a peach flavor of the milk. There's already strawberry and chocolate, but I've never seen a peach. This would be a good item to try, okay? Okay, and he talks about what the label is. The label would have sort of a reddish-orange color on it to stick with an original Highland brand. There was a word we covered called cross-modal. That's when one sensory effect affects another sensory effect, like when appearance affects flavor. Sound can affect flavor. So anytime like the appearance of a package affects how people are going to taste it, and if you set up a research to measure that, and you say the word cross-modal effect, that's telling me that you not only understand the basics of what's going on, but the vocabulary around it. And if you're someone if you're really going to try to get a high grade on these, you might start off with a specific product there, but you realize you might start off with a specific, say, type of focus group. Then you're going through the textbook and you're saying, okay, I need to show I know some of this other material well. Maybe I want to use the word cross-modal. How can I do that? Let me go back in and change what the setup was to beginning. And you actually don't have to use your actual product that you had down here. If you want to change the product you're doing because it lets you give a better answer and indicate a better understanding, you're welcome to do it. I'm going to judge it completely off what the product is as you stated on the exam. Okay, so for examples of how to use different readings, okay, subjects indicate how likely they are about a product, also answering a number of questions regarding their attitudes and beliefs. There was a whole class where we talked about, here's a locavore, what's their web of belief? And we were trying to get an idea of what they were like to market to them. That lets you bring in the whole section of web and belief. It can let you bring in stuff about the panoramic fog. Maybe you're trying to say what kind of person are they, how are they figuring out their preferences. I'll do this too. Oh, sorry, hold on. Lost it. This one figure here that we talked about in class and is in a textbook excerpt, it really summarizes most of the stuff we've been talking about, everything that impacts flavor. And so I would, as you're answering these questions, I would, have this up and say, am I talking about these different effects? For instance, hey, expect the food to taste will influence the actual taste of the food. And so, if you're talking about doing a focus group where you're looking at the product labeling, telling me that this is important because we have to set up the expectations right for them to taste it the way we want them to and for them to like it. Telling me that is important. And so it's not just about you telling me how the method can be used to measure preferences. You're telling me why it's important because that's part of it. It's okay to, when you're talking about the blind taste test and you want to explain why a blind taste test would be used, it's okay to remark on the fact that lots of different things are going to affect flavor, including appearance, sounds, context, things like that. And so instead of just saying that we want a blind taste test just to see what the actual flavor is, you can go on and say this is important because without the blind taste test, when someone says they like it or how much they like it, you don't know really what is driving that. You don't know if it's the actual taste bud sensations and aroma or if it's the actual taste bud sensations and aroma plus the environment that they're in, plus the labeling. And so my point is there, you can use those questions to show that you understand some of the class material. And I say in there that it'd help you answers to use term and vocabulary from class, but even examples would help too. So we covered the Coke versus Pepsi blind taste test in here. Right, I did it as part of slides, and it's in the textbook excerpt. And so when you're talking about what the blind taste test can tell you, you can say that we can tell you people's immediate perception from eating a small amount of it, but then say, but what this doesn't tell you is how they would like the food if they ate bigger portions of it. And then you can allude to the Coke and Pepsi focus groups where everybody said they like Pepsis in small sips, but when you drink a whole can, that wasn't the case. And see, does everybody get that, what I said? Okay. See, when you drop an example like that, it's kind of what you're doing. You're sounding like someone who has industry experience. You're talking about things that actually happened. And that's what I'm trying to get you to do. Another example from the textbook excerpt was, let's see, Ms. Deal, I think you said your cinnamon swirl Dorito is going to be sugary and savory at the same time. You could remark how you want to make sure that the product label conveys that, and there's a part in the textbook excerpt where we talk about the crab-flavored ice cream that tasted savory, but because people didn't expect it, they didn't like it, and so they changed the name of it so that people know this isn't normal ice cream. It's going to be something different. And so when you're answering a question here, you're not focus group, but as subjects discuss the appearance of the food product package. You're not just, you can do more than just say why it's good and what it's used for. You can talk about what it's bad for and how it's not all that useful. my recommendation on how to answer these questions, this is how I would do it. I would first go through and just put a couple, for each one, I'd put a couple sentences as a draft answer. You know, just my first thoughts down. And then I'd go back and read over the material again. And as you're reading over the material, you can start to think, okay, well, there was this one answer. I can include something about this there. Well, then maybe go in and some bullet points, add some notes there. Do that for all of it. Then leave it alone for a little bit. Go on a walk, wait till the next day, then go back and read it again, and you'll have better ideas of how to really tie it all together. Even the science of creativity shows the most important thing is that you can't force good ideas. You know, if you could just sit at home and tell somebody to hit you until you came up with good ideas. You know how they always, there's the meme where people are cheering and it says, the shampoo bottle's in my shower when I finally come up with a good argument. You know, a lot of times you can be arguing with someone and you don't do well, and then the next day you think of the perfect thing you could have said. It's the same thing here. You got to get away from it for a while. The nice thing about our human brains is that when it knows there's a problem that needs to be solved, it's going to work on it whether we think about it or not. Subconsciously, it's going to work on it. That's a beautiful thing. That means you're working when you're watching TV. And so leave it alone, come back to it, write them again, and I would work on a couple days. I think you can actually do it and get the same quality answers in less time if you break it up like that. But I recognize not everybody works the exact same way. So again, I'm looking for thoughtful answers to the questions that's written well, that covers material but isn't unnecessarily redundant and verbose, and that shows that you understand a lot of what we've talked about. Words, terminology, concepts. That said, you don't have to cover, I'm not expecting your answers to show every single vocabulary word that we've covered. You can imagine that'd probably be obviously a BS answer, right? And so it's a bit of art. So what is the good answer? It's a judgment call on my part, and you've got to sit there and think about what I'm going to consider a good answer or not. That's what writing is. The nice thing about starting this early and go ahead and getting down some responses, it'll help you think of questions you can ask. And that will be the exam. It's just those four. They're big. Each of them are big questions, but there's 4 questions. I'm giving you plenty of time. When I say it, I'm going to put it up Thursday, that means I'm going to have the official assignment up Thursday where you can upload it any time, but you can go ahead and start on it now. And those are the kind of questions you're not really going to have probably good questions for me until you actually look at them and try to answer them some. And we've got Wednesday for that. I know you don't like essay questions, by the way. I don't like them either. If this was a normal class where you could all be here, there'd be lots of multiple choice and things like that. But I feel like I've got to do it where you can be home answering it. And I can't give you multiple choice questions for you to take home because people cheat. But I don't like cheaters. Okay, anything else about the exam? Okay. I do want to cover one other thing. This is just apart from the textbook. Okay, it's just reminding you the excerpt from Blink. From that excerpt from Blink, you can get especially a lot of good examples to use in your... Yeah, it might be a good strategy to first get down some draft answers and then read Blink, the excerpt from Blink, because it's filled with lots of good examples, and it'll tell you, it'll give you good ideas, inspirations of what answers to do. Has anybody ever read Malcolm Gladwell before? Yeah. What'd you read?
Well, I have a tipping point is what I read of his.
Okay, yeah.
I had a question about
Yeah.
the exam. It opens on Thursday. When does that happen? Midnight?
I think it was Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Do 9:21 by midnight. See, as I think about Malcolm Gladwell, he's a great writer, but he's there to tell a story. And he'll do whatever to make that story sound good. And so just because he says something doesn't always mean it's true. He's not going to tell you about the stories that don't go along with what he's trying to say. I'll give an example. He has these really good podcasts he was doing. Did you listen to the revisionist history ones? Did you happen to listen to the one about the fries made in cow fat? Okay. Well, he did this whole big episode about how McDonald's and most places used to make French fries in beef fat and how it was so much better. And he was making it sound like, it was switching to vegetable oils was the worst thing that ever happened to America. And so, I'd never had fries that I knew came from beef fat, so I found a local farmer here who sold me some tallow, and I had the local shop refine it for me and stuff, and so I had beef fat. And in this class, I think it was the first time I took this class, we went down to the restaurant. This was pre-COVID days, of course. We did fun things then. We actually went to a restaurant, and we made one batch of fries in beef fat and one in sunflower oil. And then they didn't know which was which, and I had them just rate how much they liked each fries and stuff. And about half liked the beef fat ones more, but half liked the sunflower one more. And, it might be because y'all wasn't raised on beef fat fries like Malcolm Gladwell apparently was. But the point is Gladwell's going to tell a story. But God, he's good at it. And I do, in that excerpt you have, I think the information there is mostly correct. He spends the whole time talking about this one singer, but I actually went and got the guy's music. I don't think it's that good. But he does cover the Coke and Pepsi stuff and does a very good job. And I've actually talked to a guy at the marketing firm who ran a lot of those experiments, and he said this Malcolm Gladwell story's right on. Huh? All right. Remember of the textbook excerpt, only certain pages I'm wanting you to cover for the exam. I'm signing. There's a lot of pages with a bunch of math that we did not cover. Study guide says those aren't on there. So it's not everything in the textbook excerpt. But this thing is, and this gets back to, this is kind of another big picture about when it comes to food purchases. And all this picture is really saying is that when it comes to what drives people's preferences for food, well, basically everything does. It's obvious that things that are sensory perceptions matter, flavor, aroma, the cost, health, nutrition, convenience. You have these other things, food context. we described how the context can change what you think of food, social factors, resources, that's like financial resources, but also like intellectual resources. If you're not good at understanding what a calorie is or what a gram is, then you're going to have a harder time understanding nutrition labels. That's going to change your preferences for food. Personal factors, ideals. Certainly when we talked about locavores, we said, what is this Mr. John English like? We talked a lot about ideals here. Now, what I think you should do is, after you got a draft of your answers, just a couple sentences of what you might do for an answer, this stuff is covered on only 2 pages. And even though there's a lot of words, you could read those 2 pages and say, okay, what can I take from here and put into some of my answers to show that I understand some of this material. All right? And then you're thinking, I know how, and you're thinking to yourself, well, how much should I do? You don't need to say every single word. But just a couple of these shows me that you read it and you took something from it and applied it to the test. Okay. That's all I was going to talk about exam 1 unless there are any other questions. Okay, what we can do now is we have time to talk about projects if we want, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. So I'd say you're welcome to go if you want, but if you want to stay here and talk in person about your project and how to think about it, we can do that too. So you may go if you want, you may stay if you like. I'll love you either way, so. And remember, all I'm going to do Wednesday is answer questions and help in any way. Does anybody want me to pull their project and talk about it or something? Did you have a specific question, or you want me to just kind of start talking about it stuff?
I guess just talk about it.
Okay.
See if I'm on the right track and everything.
Okay. So, can I talk about it loud to everybody so they can? Okay. Did anybody have a specific question, but they were going to go? Okay. All right. So this is William here. I will take the flavors of mango and the flavors of an apple and combine them to create an apple mango wine. Alcoholic apple cider is the same thing as apple wine, but no. There's already a mango wine and an alcoholic apple cider, the same thing as apple wine, but no one's combined the two. Okay. You like mangoes? I love mangoes. Yeah, but I'm always such a mess when I'm done eating them.
The key is to use a wine glass.
What do you mean? What do you?
Like slice the seeds flat.
Yeah.
Slice next to the seed, and then it's like that curved thing. So if you take a wine glass, you can peel the skin off of the flesh of the fruit.
Oh, okay.
You'll drop it into the wine glass.
Huh. Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Kind of messy, but because of the shape, it
Yeah.
gets messy.
Yeah, I like that. Aren't red delicious apples the worst apples out there?
I like it personally.
Do you really?
I grew up in Virginia, so like we go apple picking all
Oh.
I felt like a Granny Smith would be too bitter. I didn't want to use like a Pink Lady or anything, so it'd be too sweet. So I didn't want it to be too.
Like those like the Honey Crisps. Those are the best, aren't they? They're not just sweet; they're also really big and stuff. Honey Crisp is just awesome. It's amazing the apple varieties they've come out with just in the last 10 years. Me growing up, all we had was Red Delicious. It's what they always put on your cafeteria plate. Nobody wanted it, and it's great for a food fight. Yeah. Since the mango and apple associated with spring, summer weather, that would be the aim of the label. Lots of oranges, yellows, blues, with some green to keep the label popping. I think if the label had a natural/rustic feel to it, that would attract more attention. The strategy to market the product, I think, will be to say it's a summer wine. We'll go for the evenings outdoors, patio talking kind of vibe. Put some Zango wine. Well, that sounds pretty good. So the Spanish word for apples, manzana? Huh. Okay. Okay, so probably what you want to think about is, there's a kind of general strategy you can always do with this. You've got a product that has a certain taste, and you've got an idea for the label. All right? And so, like, the first thing the easy answer right away is to say, are these two things compatible? Do they mesh right? And so, one way to do that is you do experiments where you separate the two. One is you can have them taste the wine without any knowledge of what it is. And sometimes you can do it where they can't even really see what it looks like. A lot of times with steaks at the FAPSI here, they'll open a room and they use these red lights so you can't tell how dark it is or anything. And see whether, like, imagine if maybe they're in a focus group where you have them taste it and say, what do you think when you taste it? It can be open-ended at first, and then you can say, is there a particular season that you think of something like this, right? And so you're designing this whole thing to see if the taste is consistent with spring, summer weather. And then you can either combine it where you have the product and the label at the same time. Or you can have a different product with the label. You could put apple juice with the label or something you think's more wintry. I don't know. And see what the effect, or just have them look at the label and ask them what they think it would taste like. So kind of the really easy thing to do is just to see if the marketing and the actual flavors line up. As a general rule, you can take everything specific you have in the prototype and test it somehow. So you've got a name, Zango Wine. And so you could imagine doing a focus group where you just write the word Zango Wine and ask people what they think it is and what it would be. Does that make sense? And we haven't told about it exactly yet, but there's a few tools open to us. There's taste test, there's focus groups, and there's surveys. And so one strategy with the paper is to take everything specific and test it somehow and say which one of these tools is best for this. And so I'll give you an example. Like if Zango Wine, if you want to know what people think of when they hear it, that's probably not something good on an internet survey, but it's probably something good for focus groups. But if you want to know like what they think of the idea of Zango Wine with the label, with information about what it is compared to other things, like regular apple cider, that's a good thing for a survey because you can put them side by side, have them rate which one. Does that make sense?
So it's kind of keeping it kind of broad right now, just seeing what would work with where.
Yeah, so yeah, the way I described it there was kind of broad, but then as you write, you start to get specific about it. And so what you're going to do is, so here's a specific. So I've talked about how you can see if the actual taste of the Zango wine is consistent with like the summer, fall, or spring, summer kind of feel, tropical, I guess. And so then you want to say, you don't just say that, you have to write about exactly how you do that. And so what you would do, you would describe how the taste test could be conducted, how you sample people. That probably won't matter that much. But the point is, you're bringing them, you're describing, you'd say, we're going to bring them in, we're going to give them the wine in a glass, in a wine glass. Maybe you want to say in a wine glass with no product information. We're going to have each person take a sip of the Zango wine without knowing what it is, and then first have kind of a focus group discussion about, no, maybe you say, then we're going to have them write on a piece of paper what it tastes like and some of the things that come to mind. And then you can say, and then we'll ask them to indicate what season or area they think it came from. See there? And then so so you always start with a general thing, and then you got to get specific about what the data actually are. And then you say and then you analyze it by looking at the percent of times they associated it with something tropical. And so you can say, what season does this remind you of? What area do you think the fruit would have been grown? Have them guess what kind of fruit it is. And then, it's kind of like the percent of times they associate it with tropical gives you an indication of how well it's consistent with the brand. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as you do it and refine it and stuff, I can keep answering questions as you go along and everything.
I was wondering when the next project assignment was, because the exam is kind of like the next step.
Yeah.
The project, is there going to be another assignment to build on top of after this?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it though.
Okay.
Probably like the next.
Pressing.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, like there won't be that many
Okay.
because they're only graded when it comes part of the project.
Yeah.
But like in the next section of class, we're going to be talking about how to do focus groups, how to do surveys. So then I might have you do assignments like, how would you?
Just trying to have an idea of what's in the next couple of weeks for the workload and everything, so.
Well, I think you plan further ahead than I do.
I think everyone's operating on that.
Right. Well, that's my normal MO anyway.
Well, thank you.
Do you need anything else? Do you want to talk about yours? Okay.
Oh, you talked about mine in front of the whole.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I have nothing against dairy products. I'm not even dairy free. My mom is dairy free.
Okay.
We have those ice creams at my house.
Yeah.
Delicious brand.
Yeah.
And they're, as the name would imply, literally so delicious. They are so
Huh.
yummy. And so I was like, no, this could be fun.
Yeah.
Like, they should do other flavors.
Yeah, and this stuff, it's not new. Like around the year 2003, I went to Chihuahua, Mexico. And this was a place where, people aren't gluten-free, they're not lactose intolerant there. But there was a shop there where they just specialize in rice milk and rice ice cream.
Wow.
And it was just for the taste. It wasn't because people there were wanting plant protein or anything like that. So, yeah.
Lots of fun things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.